Okay. Hello, everyone. Okay. We're almost
Hello,
there.
hi.
Hello.
Hello. Okay, so maybe before we start absolutely anything, let me just mention those usual technicalities. First of all, I'd like to ask everyone to keep your mics turned off when you're not speaking, yes, just in case. And the other thing is that I'm not sure if we're going to need that, but about the hand raising option. Yes, it is somewhere there hidden in the interface, and I hope we can use it. Maybe we won't need it. We'll see how intense our discussion turns out to be. Anyway. Now, officially again, hello and welcome to our meeting. Today we're talking about we're talking around this recent issue of Anglica Wratislaviensia called American Culture in Games and Game Studies. Here it is. Yes, I'm not sure anything can be. It's very clearly visible, but still, it is there. It is real. It is online in open access, and it is also in material version. So this is the trigger for our conversation, but not just I don't know, an access, let's say. First of all, let me officially welcome and introduce our participants, our speakers, who are also the authors and contributors to this issue, for which I will be eternally grateful and appreciative. I'll go in the alphabetical order. Starting from Elena Imbirowicz, who is a doctoral candidate at the Institute of English Studies at the University of Wrocław. She is into animal studies, into posthumanism, and game studies, obviously, among other things. Then let me welcome Dr. Aleksandra Mochocka from the Kazimierz Wielki University in Bydgoszcz. She is a literary scholar, an American scholar, a cultural scholar, sorry, and also interested in games, transmedia, convergence culture, so all those pop cultural stuff overlapping sometimes. Then the next is our secret participant, Leonid Moises, who will join us soon. Yes, he will be, I hope, here for the main conversation. So he should show up anytime. And meanwhile, let me tell you a few words about him. He's also a PhD candidate at Charles University in Prague, and he joins his interest in game studies with religion studies, and he sometimes does both at the same time. For instance, in the paper, yes, in our journal, as is easy to find out. Moving on to Mr. Radosław Piotr Walczak. Yes, in the same window as Aleksandra Mochocka, who is also a PhD candidate and at Kazimierz Wielki University in Bydgoszcz, and he is into literary studies, but also music, yes, and musical legacy, musical heritage, and game studies in the middle of all this. So this is, as you can see, this common denominator for all of us. My name is Agata Zarzycka, and I also come to you from the Institute of English Studies at the University of Wrocław. I do literary studies, American culture, and game studies, obviously. Also, among other things, I think we are all quite like multitasking types, so we do various stuff, but today we're mostly revolving around America and games. So before we move on to anything more specific, let me tell you a few words about this concept, let's say, of this issue as American culture in games and game studies. Well, America, I mean, one main factor in coming up with this idea is that Anglica Wratislaviensia is basically a journal devoted to all things English studies concerned, as in broad terms, so from the perspectives of linguistics, culture, literature, and various English-speaking countries and regions. So that would be one big, let's say, factor here. But I think that is, to me personally, for instance, it is quite interesting to treat it also as a sort of an maybe experimental case study in seeing what may happen if we try to, also maybe from the perspective of a game scholar, but maybe both, what may happen if we try to combine investigation of games as a medium or as a cultural phenomenon, social practice, also a branch of economy perhaps, with a specific geographical or geopolitical region. Yes, what happens with a specific of a prospective country or just a place. Yes, and then just to see what may happen. Yes, in both directions for games and for that for the place out of this combination. So I think that the papers in the journal do help us find out a little bit, but I think that this is also quite promising for the future, because it may be this experiment could be useful and so under other circumstances and other combinations. What else? Well, as coming back to the US, coming back to the American core of the discussion, I guess that it is enough, for instance, to think back to such a nostalgia-driven thing or cultural artifact as Stranger Things, to realize very quickly that it's quite likely that games in broad sense may have some special place in the American culture, in the American context, is because in, again, social, economic, cultural, first of all, perhaps both digital games and also, for instance, like analog is coming back to tabletops, to board games maybe as well. But first of all, let me spit it out. I'm thinking Dungeons and Dragons here, obviously, as like this major thing, which perhaps Leonid will tell us something about later, because he wrote about that. So this is one big thing, I guess. And another is obviously that America, the United States, has also been a major contributor to games, again, as a bubble, is in terms of industry, obviously capital companies, but also themes, also genres of games, but also genres of narrative genres, such as Western, for instance, convention, and various elements of space opera, for instance, science fiction, is all those things that can be easily traced back to this American legacy, American echoes, and have proved quite inspirational for games. As well. So I say that like looking at those two in combination may take us into different places, and maybe interesting to see where we end up. So my first question to you would be about, well, where did it take you? So where did you end up with this, like thinking about our journal and the papers? So briefly speaking, could you say a few words about what about your papers, is what they are about, what you wanted to investigate with them? Whoever is ready, please. Or should I ask you by your names? Should I? Okay. So I'll just follow the alphabetical order all throughout, if you don't mind, which means that I will ask Eleonora to say something first. Okay.
Thank you. Hello. So my topic was environmentalism and how it was presented in Sims 4 Eco Lifestyle Expansion. And I've been thinking about this topic since the game, the expansion was published, so a few years already. But only when I was studying in the US, actually 2 years ago, I realized that it very much fits into the American context more than I thought before. And before I did my research, actually, well, there were a few shocks considering environmentalism and taking care of environment related things that I went through in the US. I lived in New Orleans, and my first big shock was that they don't have recycling. I mean, they do have problems. The problems, yes, also, but programs that you can opt for and sort of participate in, and they are related to recycling. But it is not common, and it is not obvious, and it's not obligatory in most places, New Orleans included. So all the things the majority of things that I did in Europe, living in Wrocław, considering environmentalism, for example, taking care of how much plastic I use, trying to use reusable containers and so on, it just didn't make that much sense. Because whether it was plastic or glass or any other material, it just went to landfill anyway. So I've started going deeper into those issues from the American perspective. I was already interested in them before, but I didn't know that much about the American context and the representation of environmentalism in eco lifestyle, which is crooked, basically. It did make sense in this context, especially. So that was my topic.
Okay, thank you so much. We'll be coming back a lot, I think, to all of your topics as we go. But now moving on, perhaps to Aleksandra and Radosław, could you elaborate on yours?
Okay. So, if I may start, so all in all, I identify as an ACA fan. So I try to research what I like, and I like what I usually, conduct my research on. And some time ago, I came across this game, Night in the Woods, and I was enchanted because it reverberated with a lot of, my emotions, but also it kind of made sense in the framework of what I teach as a scholar teaching American literature and contemporary American literature. So again, I found this game worth studying. I was a little bit late because a lot had already been written about the game, like a lot of studies. But still, I thought that, okay, maybe we can contribute. And okay, like after and during the pandemic, I got into a kind of a standstill, and I needed some new topics and some ideas to restart me, so to say. And here I started collaborating with Radosław, who, as Agata has mentioned, is also a musician and got some background in the theory of music, and it made it possible for us to analyze the game as a whole, okay, not just the graphic design, not just the gameplay, but like all together, like including music and music effects. And I found it really, really rewarding. And again, as I've mentioned, for me personally, it reverberated with Southern Gothic and American Gothic tradition. I love it. I teach about it a lot. I'm going to write more on it, okay, in the future. And it also kind of reverberated with that no-saying tradition in American culture, with the tradition of opposing the mainstream, dismantling the American dream. And actually, for me, again, it's an interesting thing because when I was a kid, America was that land of success, the land of plenty. And gradually, as I grew older, I realized that maybe it's not exactly the case, that the country is much more complex and complicated. And therefore, worth studying and admiring, but again, complex and beautiful in that complexity. So I loved that game, and I wanted to contribute more to the discussion about it.
And Alexandra observed that music is a very important theme in this game, and that this is so important theme, although there is narration, of course, gameplay, graphics, but also music. And as you've mentioned, it's a whole, it's very, very important factor of the game. So I started analyzing it and how the music greatens the gameplay, why it's important. We've also had discussion why this game isn't
Yes.
labeled as a music game,
Mhm.
because now there's this game with Snufkin, yes, with Moomin Valley, and it's labeled as a game, as a music game. However, there are just some mechanics that are musical ones, and I guess in our opinion, this Night in the Woods game has much more to offer in means of music and why it is so consistent with the topic, with narration, with immersion. Yeah.
So, all in all, if I am to wrap it up, I'm really grateful, and again, I would like to thank you, Radek, for your collaboration, because again, it was something that personally got me going and writing again. But it was also fascinating to implement knowledge, like pieces of knowledge taken from different disciplines, like to weave that narrative about the game using like methodologies taken from different disciplines. And okay, I don't want to talk too much about this now, but again, I found it super interesting for me that there is that issue of a journal devoted to American culture, and I can contribute with something that is American culture presented via the medium of a video game. So again, okay, but maybe that will kind of surface later on in the discussion. So that's it.
All right, thank you so much. Meanwhile, Leonie managed to join us, as I can see. Yes, hello, hi. And should we can I just invite you right away to also say something? I have introduced you just to make sure. So could you just say a few words about your topic, about your paper, basically, what it's about?
Of course, thank you very much. I'm very glad to join. I hope you can hear me because connection is not ideal. Well, I really hope for the best. I'm originally a scholar of religion and also an avid RPG player. And basically that's it. Because my article combines those things. I've studied research and representation of religion in role-playing games 2018, and was slowly going deeper and deeper, as it usually goes with research. And precisely when I heard about this issue, I was thinking about reasons. Basically, I've come under some level of understanding what is the mainstream approach to depiction of religion in role-playing games, and I was surprised, what exactly shaped it. And among other things, I was toying with the idea of basically historical influence. What if religion is so similar different games, because it is basically the same religion, the religion which actual living game designer have more exposure to. And after I heard about the possibility to write something about American culture and its interaction with games, it basically all came together, because it was obvious. So that, of course, it's this image of religion in games is strongly shaped by Protestantism. Games are, especially D&D, is extremely American thing. And even more importantly, it was especially obvious for me as a Russian how specific game designers, even from very different cultural contexts than American, copy American ideas in terms of narrative design, in terms of not to mention game mechanics, that's obvious, but even world building, aesthetic, and so on. It all basically came together, and I think now this chapter will be part of the dissertation I'm currently writing. Well, at least some ideas from it.
Okay, thank you so much for now. So I think we can already see so many interesting angles that we have on board here, starting from like ecology, but also from this very practical angle, like stepping far beyond, literature, culture into very tangible context of everyday life. We do have, proper literature, as including the classics, the canonic literature with the Southern Gothic, for instance, which also indicates regions, yes, and regional perspectives, regional focus. We have this more systemic insight into religion, also as something maybe cross-sectional, something like going closer to the American mainstream, and the historical context, first of all. And I also think that quite an interesting perspective that emerges from all of this is that I think that our conversation is not only about American games, but also about the creative process. To some extent, yes, and about the research process as well. So my next question would be to all of you. I mean, maybe I'm not sure if to all of you, because Alexandra, for instance, has already started talking about it, and I think Leonid as well. So if you just don't feel pressed, yes, we don't have to make a full round this time. But if you have any other maybe insights to share about your reasons for actually reacting to this specific call for papers, is and just this moment you realized that you did that you wanted to say something about the topic, or maybe in other words, in a broader context, what from your specific perspectives, research perspectives, which are quite different, they meet somewhere, yes, but they also contribute different things. What makes it interesting or productive to combine American games in whichever direction? Yes, but do you have any other thoughts about that? Anything else to add? And again, I don't want to like force you again, but just making a full round, perhaps starting from Eleonora again. Do you?
Yeah, I think for me it was the most interesting thing to see that things that I've noticed earlier, how caring for the environment, for example, is represented, that they come from a very specific context, and it's not that's sort of obvious, and I knew it before, but only seeing this context and then in turn researching it showed me that it is extremely specific and embedded in culture to treat environmentalism this way. And I think that's interesting for a bigger field than games, actually. I mean, representation obviously matters, but it was also interesting to me to see how it works in politics, and how global politics are pretty much very strongly influenced by, actually, I don't know if I can call them little, but to me previously pretty small details of American culture, such as its Protestant roots, or particular 1980s environment-related propaganda. So yeah, to me it was a very interesting comparison, because it matters for more than simply America. It matters to all of us to some extent, I think. Yeah, I don't know what else could I add, but I thought it was very inspiring context.
Okay, thank you so much. And I also, just to maybe signal some connections which may or may not later go back to, I think that it quite resonates with what Leonid mentioned about, American culture setting, establishing certain patterns, certain models, like intentionally or not necessarily intentionally, yes, but those things tend to spread. outside some kind of uncontrollably, and yeah, so
Yeah.
just I think too. Mm-hmm.
I also noticed a lot of similarities between our articles, actually. Mainly, you wrote, Leonid, as a religion as a private practice, and it was really interesting to me because it is how environmentalism was treated in the game I analyzed, as a private identity practice rather than a political action or something you do in order to actually change something bigger than just your life. So yeah, I think a lot of nuances here actually match.
Okay, thank you. If we were to, yeah, Leonid, would you like to refer to that?
Yeah, maybe I
Or-
would like since I mentioned, yeah. Well, I think that for me, this article and the process of studies it is part of, it's a lot about impact and relevance, identity experimentation, because I often see people who completely misunderstand their religions or religion as an idea, and it is obviously a political problem, because I mean, with Islamophobia being obviously the simplest example and so on. And I was thinking a lot about possibility of games to contribute to expanding cultural literacy in that region, and at the same time about the reasons for their failure. And this particular work was very interesting because, on the one hand, I've already had my researches about current situation, and I saw how, well, basically thousands, maybe millions of people, especially in former atheist background like Russia, draw their understanding how religions work from pop culture, and often so it has very real impact. I mean, not in factual terms, but in what religion is about, how it is practiced in general, and so on. And it was amazing to see how, on the one hand, it's shaped by very specific, particular, and extremely religious culture of USA, and this thing I wasn't able to include because, well, time and length reason, but in fact how particular people, like a very small group of initial D&D developers who were, for example, Gary Gygax, who like the main D&D creator, was Jehovah's Witnesses, so a member of a very specific religious denomination, and the things he introduced in games that would, for example, fantastic culture at the time. So not only American culture, but even American culture in the guise of specific with their own culture encoded and shaped beliefs were present when D&D was created, and then after D&D expanded, became the norm for thousands of people. And yes, the real cult of private initiative, of private life, and anything is impressive when you study games, because yeah, religion is private practice, psychology is private practice, romantic love is private practice, anything is supposed to be private. It is weird, I guess, to a point.
Okay, thank you so much. Yes, I think we were quite naturally like slipping into my next question, but before that,
But if
yes, Alexandra Radoslav, of course, the floor is yours.
Okay, just like a brief remark, and I would like to say that when it comes to the game that we have analyzed, we also wanted to analyze it as a well-created design project that unifies the gameplay with a narrative. The game is narrative driven, but the team that created the game succeeded in making it really, really smooth. And what I was about to say is that the game is also very, very much American, but on the other hand, very much universal. So I think that it's something that fascinated me, okay, about the game, that a lot of it can be understood if you know some American context, but even without a context, it's universal, and it's universal not because of globalization or Americanization, but it's universal because it's about humans being human and suffering as human beings, and also the way it is told, like the narrative, as you know, we put it in the text. For us, it's akin to magical realism, which is not inherently like Northern American. It can be found everywhere all over the globe, and it originated in Latin America and in Germany. Okay, so again, I liked that, and I liked analyzing the game as a, again, very well executed project, because hey, maybe like games are just, you know, not just like cultural texts. There are also commodities to be sold. And as I used to teach some game design, and I'm still interested in that, you know, that was also one of my objectives, to have a look at it as a, you know, project system. And
I had a thought in means of America, which set some trends. I think this game, Night in the Woods, is a continuity of another anthropomorphic character, similarly to the Disney characters, cartoon Disney characters, maybe Peppa Pig, also a pig, also in Poland, than Reksio, for example. Yes, and games about Reksio are very popular. Were very popular. Yeah, and that was my comment.
Yes, and actually, if I may add a footnote and some context, because like Radek is currently studying, examining that nostalgia-driven, you know, great comeback of Reksio games in Poland, and it's like interesting to like to think, yes, about why such characters are still appealing to people, and why such graphic design could be so appealing. So actually, this is not what we have covered, but again, like once you start, you know, studying something, there is no end to it. So again, we're really grateful that we were able to share some of our
we were
findings.
also considering that some other American trends are also present there. For example, maybe some themes from Twin Peaks.
Yes, so that's what we put, some continuity and some new inventions, but again, as I've mentioned before, like mainly the Gothic tradition and the No-Saint tradition. Okay.
Okay, thank you so much. So again, I mean, we kind of naturally started spreading the scope, yes, and looking for like stepping outside America, and it happens in various ways, as you can see, sometimes through parallel, that we have something similar somewhere else, yes, or we just share various conventions, various like cultural solutions, yes, or logical structures, yes, and sometimes it is quite like the other way around, about something very, very local, very specific, spreading uncontrollably, as in weird ways, by means of economy, obviously, but not only. It's not necessarily in that such a simple way. So I think this is very interesting. But briefly coming back to America for a moment, if you were, and again, I think you already may have signaled some of those things, but still, if you were to identify maybe a single thing about American culture or American anything else that you would not have discovered or realized without this game context, what would it be? Or possibly the other way around. What did you need America for when dealing with your game or with games, this specific angle contributes something unique in your research for this paper. Eleonora again?
In my paper, I needed America, and I explored American issues mostly in order to the problem with the game, the issue I had with the representation in the game in Eco Lifestyle was that it was not coherent with what should really be done in real life, or what is useful in any way in terms of environmentalism. And it was environmental actions were represented as simply empty, I might say. They were objects, they were identity-related activities, but they weren't actually useful. It wasn't mirroring what could be useful or what could really be done in real life to a major extent. And it wasn't just oversimplification or just the necessity of adapt those things to to a certain world of The Sims, which wasn't majorly affected by the expansion. It was more there was a certain direction in this representation, and while I knew it might be the American way of seeing things, I didn't know where it stemmed from. And what I realized, or what I interpreted after doing some research, it stems from a particular anti-environmental policy or a set of policies in 1980s, 1990s. While America is taking some steps towards more America, I mean, obviously United States, while the United States are taking some steps towards better understanding of climate change and environmental needs, it is still a big threat, a huge threat to many businesses, to a big part of the political scene. And through last decades, it has been solved it was solved by moving the sphere of environmental concern to the private sphere, which we already mentioned. Yes, it's okay to do that, but it's not a public necessity. Yes, it's okay to do that because you want to be that kind of person, but it's more about you than it is about anybody else. And in the game, it works the same. Those items, those activities are there to create a particular kind of sim, so you can simulate their life, but it's not about the community or a bigger context that much. So when I understood it was already becoming to look like this in public life, I realized why this representation makes a lot of sense, while it didn't make sense for me at all in the beginning. I mean, it made sense that they didn't represent, that EA didn't represent some actions that would be harmful for them as a company correctly, but the direction of this was stronger and more more twisted in a particular way than just the omission of some particular issues.
Okay, thank you. And again, very specific historical events, yes, or developments on a, let's say, local level, if we can call them like that. And again, kind of roller coaster consequences for that. Okay, thank you so much. Leonid, how about you and your discoveries about America or games?
America 4 mainly necessary. I'm a big fan of historical approach, and it was just an answer to a question of how exactly approach came to be. So I was slowly going back in history from initial research 8 years ago on Dragon Age Inquisition to Baldur's Gate 2, and finally I slowly crawled to the original D&D, and it was very curious to suddenly, on the one hand, to remember like my university courses on American religion and the way Protestantism changed there, and the texts by Weber on the spirit of Protestantism and the spirit of capitalism and so on. And I was like, oh wow, university education really did pay off. And on the other hand, very helpful in other people, including other people around me, basically, because now I finally could see that, yeah, that's think when they think about religion. So however surprisingly it is basically the constant reiteration of very few very particular American trends, like the Protestant backgrounds, their very specific understanding of Catholicism, and their specific generational trauma of cults created by, for example, People's Temple and events like that, which are kind of like in this Jurassic Park scenario of fly being encased in amber, keeps appearing and reappearing and reappearing constantly in pop culture works after that, like 50 years later. So it was very helpful in terms of better understanding games, and in a way it helped me to understand, or maybe explain, America to my friends and students.
Good, thank you so much, and also thank you for mentioning your reversed, in a way, journey, yes, from more recent games, also digital games, back to Dungeons and Dragons, where all our paths meet, because I think brings out another interesting thing about how, again, American history can be helpful in following game history, and the other way around. I think this is something very interesting that may be going on here. Thanks a lot. Alexandra and Radek, yeah?
Okay, so for me, on the one hand, it was like, okay, with our game, like Night in the Woods, it was like, oh, gosh, I can show it to my students when I'm talking about Grapes of Wrath or Oil of Mice and Men, and when I talk about that. But also, truth be told, I still discovered a lot. I discovered a lot about the working class ethos of American people, and this is something that seems to be neglected in popular culture and in mainstream discourse. And I have learned a lot about the Rust Belt cities, towns, and the situation of the people living there. Obviously, sometimes it wasn't a nice picture, but again, it was like, okay, actually, that was, I think, what the creators of the game aimed at, like showing people, educating people on such issues. But for me, it was something like eye-opening, because again, that's something that, at least from my perspective, okay, it wasn't that much obvious for me when I studied popular culture. So yes, again, I was able to recognize a lot of patterns that I knew before, but again, it was eye-opening. And also, again, I've mentioned it before, but I love when a popular culture text is well executed, well made, and I got that sense of awe when I play the game and when we analyze it step after step, okay, rediscovering how well it was created, and how well the narrative was integrated with the gameplay. So again, yeah.
Maybe I'll continue your thought, because the thing that I've learned, or maybe which was repeated in this game, was the living in a small town. Also communities of small towns. Yeah, I've previously mentioned Twin Peaks because it's just another source of knowledge about living in a small town, community, festives, maybe creating bands, going to the high school, for example.
Yeah, but
And part-time jobs, things like that.
so yes, it's kind of like both something that we can take literarily, but we can also read it symbolically. And again, sorry to say, but I teach that basic American literature course, and again, this game is like, but it's not my criticism. It's like a perfect tool to explain certain things, as for example environmental storytelling and that spatial symbolism in American literature and culture, the no saying tradition, that dismantling of the American myth. So again, it's not my criticism.
The other side of the coin, of America. We see big cities, we hear songs about New York, but maybe not about small towns.
And there was also quite a lot, like in the game, there is quite a lot about spirituality and different approaches to spirituality and religion, and how spirituality could be related to mental health. And
local
how,
narrations, also legends.
Like local legends as well. So a plethora of topics. And again, one thing that I should have mentioned it, like our game is actually kind of controversial because of one of the people involved in her creation. And now, like nowadays, if you start writing about it, you need to provide that disclaimer. And we kind of hesitated if we should continue our research and if we should publish on it or not. But all in all, we decided that okay, it was a team project. One person was that bad apple in the basket, but other people contributed a lot, and that person is no longer alive. So that person that was like that was
the
responsible, the composer. And he was responsible for some really unspeakable things. But again, like, he wouldn't profit from us talking about the game. It's not the question of voting with our wallets, okay? And I think that like the other people from his team, they still deserve recognition. So actually, that was something that we have found in some in a lot of criticism about like on this game. So we really needed to take care of that issue. But all in all, we decided, okay, let's do it.
Right. Thanks a lot. So we have American history, American geography, American daily practices, and also, well, daily practices maybe in terms of labor practices that translate into very, like, again, extra textual, extra game contexts and touch on the very, very real people. So and all of that again creates quite a picture. I would say. I think that we will be not yet, but we will slowly be heading towards wrapping things up, and which brings me to my probably the last question for today, because we're like gathered here, all of us are basically non-Americans, like digging into American contexts from various angles. As I keep kind of counting them and listing them and relisting them and so on. So I wanted to ask you about that experience also as a part of the research process. Was there anything on your way? Yes, was there anything in particular that you had to keep an eye on, perhaps, in terms of maybe I know some stereotypes, as Alexandra mentioned at the beginning, is that America did have and still has various strong images, yes, to live up to, yes, in this transcultural global context, and also local context for specific maybe countries and nations and so on. So was there anything in terms of stereotypes of maybe feelings, emotions, like or some preconceptions, some projections that you had to like keep an eye on because they might have interacted with your research process, might have affected, and I'm not asking necessarily about your personal like preconceptions, but just also things from the from the air, yes, like the things that you can come across in your like secondary sources, in social media, in culture in general. It's just in the environment, and you need to be aware of that while focusing on doing good research. Is there anything, do you have any experience like that from this process, alone or
Yes, very much so. And there are both public and private aspects of this question, obviously. So I was thinking about this topic for a longer time. And before, I didn't really create a take on it from American perspective. I was more thinking about just representation in eco lifestyle that rubbed me the wrong way since the very beginning, and I purchased this game as soon as it was published because I love the title Eco Lifestyle, and I'm a Sims player, so it was very much marketed just to my doorstep. But then when I was first creating anything or discussing this topic, I got the response from some scholars that it is impossible for me to assume bad intentions from electronic arts, as if they wanted to create a misrepresentation of ecology or environmental care, and yes, it was a difficult question for me because I didn't really assume those intentions. It was about the cultural context the game is from. I'm not sure there was a board meeting where they decided to misrepresent environmental policies, although I cannot be sure that there wasn't either. But yeah, it was a cultural context, and without it, it didn't really make sense. Sort of discussing this game without the context that created this particular angle, and I had to. It made a lot of sense to implement it, and there were also private things. I was writing the text when I was living in States, and yeah, it was hard to me, a little bit hard to me emotionally, because on the one hand, I was working with some very cool scholars and I was deeply grateful to be there. And it was a wonderful experience. And on the other hand, I was angry at the lack of the things that I believe are utterly necessary. And I was dealing with like a 20 plastic bags from my every shopping visit, and me being Polish, I just stacked those plastic bags, then throw them away because that's what I do. But it didn't make sense. It was just the endless overflow of plastic. And on one hand, it was I had to sort of be mindful of my current bias, of the fact that I was angry while writing this article, but maybe just the lack of certain policies. They don't talk about everybody, of course, and every context, and it doesn't mean that there is a lack of any good environmental policy in the country at all.
Okay, thank you. So one preconception maybe to keep in mind would be like America as this big capitalist villain, which may or may not be like justified in all contexts, but it seems relevant culturally. Thank you for that. Leonid, how about you and your experience with preconceptions?
Well, I believe I also somewhat similar experience. First, of a lot of people that I forgot the word. I think that people creating games with religion have some sort of intentions or consciously trying to misrepresent it, and it was, to be honest, to encounter the sentiment. And sometimes I think that simply because, at least in Russian contexts, a lot of people are really in American culture. They kind of feel the need to defend it. I don't know, using different strategies, like that one, for example, like trying to paint my claim as absurd by distorting the claim itself. And so, yes, there was this similarity. And on the other hand, I was always a bit worried that kind of anti-Protestant bias may influence the work, because, well, I do not have anything against real people and real religion, but at the same time, well, I was writing, it was, if I remember correctly, somewhere around insurrection in Washington, and the American Protestantism angle was very politicized. It was very problematic, and like I felt that suddenly my hobby acts maybe a bit too tightly with actual political situation myself, and that I was, and that I had with at the same time taking some sort of stance, and because I assuming some form of responsibility and acknowledging some bias, but at the same time that I want to do research, and I do not want to just rant about globalism and Americanization of popular culture for 12 pages.
Okay, thank you so much. So that might, among other things, mean that we could ask that we could add the issue of conservatism, perhaps, like political. I mean, maybe those connections between this religious, let's say, foundation, and maybe translated into political conservatism. And another thing that we have that somehow America has come to bring out, at least this when in several contexts, again in various levels of justification, perhaps, but still relevant. Thank you so much, Alexandra and Radek. What about you?
Okay, so for me, the huge problem was while researching the game, as usually is with popular culture, is the proliferation of information. So it's really, really difficult to write about a video game without, having read all the reviews, all the appraisals or criticism on it, all the walkthroughs with commentaries, and it seems that popular culture products are very, very kind of heavily burdened with a kind of audience response. So it was kind of difficult to sort out my impulses, my ideas from that. Also, what we've already mentioned, that controversy surrounding the game, as at some point it transpired that the composer Hoka, was responsible for sexual harassment, and then some circumstances surrounding his end of life situation. So that was kind of difficult. Also, for this contribution, I needed to be more American studies oriented, because my primary background was actually in more British culture, British language, but over the years I got more kind of global when it comes to studying popular culture, and it was again, kind of refreshing and useful for me to remind myself, okay, focus on that American context. However, again, I think that this game is much more universal than it is usually presented, and it's got much more universal appeal.
And the things that I focused on during writing this paper were also gameplays, and discovering all of these music mini games, listening to the scales, like the musical knowledge, the theory of music. We've also experienced one of the gameplays where there was music off.
Yeah,
And
so
it was very
because of
weird.
because of the legal issues.
Yeah.
Again, it's like something we didn't tackle it in our text, but it's the question of paratextuality, and again the contexts that determine the audience's responses. So because there's some legal issues, some walkthroughs didn't have that like music score, and like watching such a gameplay, it's like a totally different experience from playing it with the proper music score accompanying, the narrative arc, emotional arc,
Immersion.
an immersion of a game. So again, actually, while we are talking and discussing it with you, I've got some ideas for another text, okay, to write about it. So that's something. Okay, I've already got some ideas that maybe there is still some place for them to be published somewhere.
I think that to wrap up all of this, in my case, all of these mini games and the music in this game, it was interesting experience. I guess I've learned some things because I've checked all of these things twice, because I was at that time still a student of music, as my second studies, so. Yeah, double checking. I guess double checking, watching all of these gameplays,
and playing in this
game.
game.
And playing also
Yes.
playing this game.
But again, thank you again. Thank you for inviting us, because again, I've got so many ideas. I need to put them down, okay, because I can see that, okay, that kind of talking, discussing stuff with you, it's like brainstorming for me, and I love it in my work. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. I guess it's just signals that we should be doing that more often, and basically what more is there to wish for from a conversation like this. This is great, and it also actually signals, I guess, because we maybe started this round with looking into some preconceptions or just like America specific things that may have to be taken into account when dealing with American stuff, yes, and from political context or social or historical and so on, but we've slowly shifted into hermeneutics and hermeneutics in broader terms, right? And just I think it is very, very interesting and productive observation is that I'm not sure if it's just about popular culture, obviously not, but here that it manifests itself how we have to also learn to navigate between interpretations, between specific individual points of view and sets of experience and so on when we deal with texts basically of culture, how fascinating it can be. Yes, I can see a hand raised. I'm not sure whose is it, but
sorry, I just started smiling and laughing because hermeneutics. I still have one exam to pass. Yes, and
as a doctoral student.
Yeah, hermeneutics. This
On the
topic
list.
is on the list, and also Kosinski, yes.
Yes, so
hermeneutics
Kosinski,
in video games.
Yes, mutual friends. Yes, so it's kind of educational, and I know I'm going to sound really patronizing or whatever, but I think that in our case it's super great to have a kind of collaboration between seasoned scholar, so to say, and someone who has just started recently, because actually both parties can take so much from such a kind of a contribution. Also being kind of asked to write for a specific issue focused on something, again, it gives it gives me a lot of incentive to be more disciplined and more focused. So again, I think that again it was like a great initiative, a great project to participate in.
Okay, thank you so much. I guess it may be sort of a manipulation on my side, because it's a great moment to, great statement to use for summing the discussion up. But yes, and I also, because my last question was supposed to be about the stuff that may possibly be interesting for people who are maybe not so much into games or into America, and how our discussion, for instance, and the publication as well may be useful to in broader context. But I think that this has sort of emerged already from the way you kept sharing very interesting stuff about, again, the research process simply, and like this, doing academic things, yes, and all the things that come along the way. So maybe just to give you the floor for if anyone has anything else maybe to add, to refer to, any rounding thoughts. I just wanted to mention that we do have a question as well from the audience, is that I will refer to in a moment, but just not to disturb the stream for now. Yes, just to close this thread. Yes, Alexandra. Yes.
Okay. So very, very briefly, I think that even if someone is not interested in video games per se, or in games per se, or in American culture, I think it would be interesting for them to see how in 21st century we've got new platforms, maybe not so new, but platforms other than literature, like the cinema and more traditional forms of expression, to talk about very universal and super important human issues, what we've studied, what Eleonora and Leonid studied as well. So even if someone is not interested in games, I would think that okay, it's super interesting to see how people use different media, combining all ideas, inventing new ones, and still crafting that kind of universal discussion about the humanity and our future and the state we are in. So I think all the games mentioned in the articles, all the games discussed in the articles, they've got that kind of a humanistic angle to them, this way or another, and their discussion is also like that. So to call to all the humanists out there, okay, even if you are not super into American studies or video games, I think it would be valuable to have a look into that publication. Thank you.
Right. Thank you so much. And now, as I said, we do have a question, which may actually be a good, I think, starting point for yet another round of discussion, or yet another project, actually. But let's just do what we can right now. And the question is playing games a new religion? And I'm not asking anyone to start this discussion, just please.
I've read the question a while ago, and I was already thinking about it with half my brain, so I might start. Well, the only definition of religion that I have on my mind is Durkheim's, so I'm going to be more specific. But if I only saw the mainstream of playing games, I maybe even would be inclined to think that it has an aspect of religion, or there is some similarity. But knowing how many bubbles and little groups are within the game playing community, I would rather describe it as a practice, because our beliefs are vastly different.
Okay, thank you so much. Yes, Alexandra?
So I would say that games are part of culture, like a huge part of culture at present. So they may offer that sense of communitas, and they may offer us what we call liminoidal experiences. So maybe they are not, religion per se, but
Some factors are covered by
some,
video
yes,
games,
like they
community.
can provide some, some things that people used to look for in religion, and it's not that they replace religion or religions, but if, like, people always want something, they want some flow, they want some immersion, they want some
Variation.
yes, and to belong in a group of people they share emotions and thoughts and ideas with. And games as part of culture definitely provide that. But on the other hand, we live in the era of neo-tribes, and everything is flowing, changing and unstable. And I wouldn't say that playing games is like a new religion per se. It's just like one of the many activities that people undertake in order to be
Share
people,
together.
to be people, to share things and to belong and to entertain themselves.
To feel the being in a social bubble, yeah. Wszystko.
Okay.
Thank you. Leonie?
Yeah. Well, I also thought a bit about this question, and I think it illustrates nicely a lot of things that I've talked about in my article, and like touches upon other subjects that were mentioned in this issue, because the answer on this question strongly depends on our definition of religion. It is an extremely complicated subject, very politicized and very Eurocentric, among other things. And precisely basically what I was writing about, because idea a lot of people have, even in academia, have this idea of religion, well, fundamentally simple, I guess, like at some level, like is like Volsive churches and whatever, and yes, something that our, I don't know, older relatives do, so whatever, but it is very much not simple, and complex and very fluid, as it's a lot about very specific borders between different facets of identity, between different individuals, and between practice and myth and so on. And I think gaming obviously influences religion very strongly. And if we would go like from pragmatic standpoint, I believe that for some people, gaming fulfills the same role as religion fulfilled for them. But at the same time, obviously, it is not always so, because otherwise there wouldn't be religious gamers.
Okay, yeah, thank you so much. I think that just to again add maybe some rounding comment here. I think that we might also take into account this distinction between religion and religiosity, which so I think that also what you actually referred to as this broader set of practices that like ritualistic practices or communal or collective, basically, or in some other ways fulfilling a specific set of needs, yes, in individual or collective experience. And I think that those things have also been explored a little bit with regard to popular culture in broader terms, or maybe specifically to participatory culture, to fandoms, yes, to what fans do. Yes, there has been like a shout out to Matt Hills, among others, I think, and his research on it. So there's we are definitely up to something, yes, in this thread. But I guess it just makes a nice, promising starting point for something new, for something as a new project, maybe a new issue of something, or just a new brainstorming session. I would be very happy to take part in it, yes, whenever it occurs. And I guess that unless someone would like to say something, just to wrap up, I guess it's time, yes, for me, to thank you very, very, very much for your participation, for making the journal happen. Yes, first of all, for all your contributions, but also for your time here and for your input, your insights, which I think have been very, very precious and like eye-opening. So thank you very much, and hopefully see you again in their similar circumstances. And yeah, thank you.
Yes.
Thank you very much
Thank
for
you very much.
invitation.
Thank you very much for the invitation and the possibility. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.